Motherfucker's convincing me, man. Like, he did it with Emacs. Now he's trying to do it with NixOS. Like, what's next? Is he gonna convince me that we transition into women, like our genders, and I'm just gonna follow? Like, the hell's going on?
My opinion of this isn't going to change in another year. NixOS isn't for everybody. In fact, it's for nobody. NixOS is for nobody.
Use AI for the things that I don't care about too much. But this would be like my main system that we're talking about. This would be like my operating system, my macOS, you know? This is what everything depends on. And if AI fucks it up here, everything else is gonna be fucked up. So this is like the base. This has to be done good, and this has to be done with someone with experience. Why I think Neri is a mistake. I think Neri is a mistake. I'm not even a Linux user, brother. And I'm going to react to this, and I'm going to get more unsubscribers and more hate from the Linux community. Like, you know, that's the fun part about the internet. I'm interested in this one, NixOS. Matt recorded this one. Just want to see what happened after a year. The problem is that it's too long. It's like 30 minutes long. The Nix here. Man, but this is 30 minutes long. It doesn't matter. Let's do it, okay? And I have a few clips out of here for tomorrow. Oh, hold on. It's right here. 35 minutes. Damn it, Matt. Like, that is long, brother. Well, I didn't mean it that way, okay? Just let's not get all NixOS-y.
A few days ago, I've been on NixOS for an entire year. Now, first off, I don't know.
So he did switch to Nix for a year. We talked about Nix with Rumen on Friday, and motherfucker's convincing me, man. Like, he did it with Emacs. Now he's trying to do it with NixOS. Like, what's next? Is he gonna convince me that we transition into women, like our genders, and I'm just gonna follow? Like, the hell's going on?
Where that year has gone. The time has just flown on by, but it has been a whole year, and I still have a whole year to go on my challenge. But I've been asked a few times now to provide an update, a year on NixOS, my thoughts. And I do have several thoughts that have kind of been building in the back of my brain over the course of the last year. So that's what we're going to do today, actually, is talk about those thoughts that I have on NixOS. Now, first off, apologies if this seems like a ramble, because it is one. I do have some notes, but they're just notes. I'm going to ramble on through the topics as my brain comes up with them. So apologies for any incoherentness that is, you know, usual in my videos, I guess. So when I think about NixOS and
the nerdy topic,
my experience with it so far, the biggest thing that comes to mind is the differences between NixOS and a traditional Linux distro like Fedora, Ubuntu, Debian, what have you. And there are many different differences between the two different ways of creating a Linux operating system. Obviously, when you talk about a traditional Linux distro, you're talking about a file structure that the vast majority of Linux uses. When you talk about Nix, that file structure is completely different. When you talk about how things are done on the system, NixOS usually focuses all of their efforts on doing those traditional Linux things in their configuration file, whereas with traditional Linux distros, they usually have regular old commands that you would do in order to complete those operations. Now, before I move on, I should make it clear that just because
but I just want to understand. I just want to know if his experience was good or not. That's basically what I want to know. Like, is he gonna say yes, Nix is the best or Nix is the worst? Let's see.
Matter all that much in your day-to-day. You're not going to really notice the fact that your user directory is basically empty. You're not going to notice the fact that your system is mostly read-only in the root directory. You're not going to notice those things. Now, there have been times over the course of the last year, however, where that has not been the case. Now, as I record this today, actually, I did come across a situation where I noticed that difference. I'm using Android Studio to build an Android app, and it needed to install an SDK. It tried to install it in the traditional way you'd find on a regular Linux distro, and it couldn't do it because the system directory where it needed to install that thing didn't exist, and it couldn't create it because the root system is read-only. So those differences showed up in an unexpected place. I can probably count the amount of times where the differences in file structure has actually mattered on one hand over the course of the last year. Usually it's when an application tries to take something into its own hands and do something with the root directory, like install a package or something like that. Most of the time, it doesn't matter whatsoever. It matters much less than the naysayers. Say, for example,
now, I'm already into that mentality, let's say. I hate when I have to go to an application's GUI and click around, and I know that the settings are not going to be stored in my .files. I just hate it, you know, like there are applications like this one. I think this one allows you to export the configuration, but I just hate it. I want to configure everything in a file, you know, the way that I configure Kitty or NeoVim, or the way that I'm learning to configure Emacs now, or any other application in the system. So that's a good thing, you know. I think
example, I wanted to have a service that started up a clipboard manager on my window manager, on my system. I could do that in a traditional way. Obviously, I could use systemctl, enable the service just like you normally.
Yep, I don't like that because you rebuild your computer, you will not remember and everything's just gonna run out of sync, you know? Like if I install a new tool, the way that I do it right now is I just type the brew command, and if I want to make my life easier for the future, you know, I should come to this first setup script or add it to my brew file, right? Add it to one of my brew files, add the application here, but I don't do it. So the next time that I build this computer, my macOS computer, that application is probably not gonna be there. So I think that's useful on the next side of things, that specific part.
We would, but on NixOS, really what you're supposed to do is go into the configuration file and put in a declarative statement that will start that service on your next system rebuild and starting the service within a configuration file, but you are also configuring the service right here in one file. That's a big change from where you'd have to do in a traditional Linux distro, where you are more focused on starting the service and then hunting down the configuration file, figuring out the configuration file syntax and options and all that stuff, getting it saved because you've forgotten to use sudo and having to go through and do the edits again, and then going through and restarting what you've.
Okay, so it's similar to what I have in macOS with my brew files, right? Like these are my essential files to install, right? I have other sets of files like nice to haves, some optionals, the base files as well. I think these are the files that even my wife's computer would get. Like, why the fuck would she need Starship? she doesn't even open the prompt, but it's essential because I log into that shit sometimes and I just need to use it, okay? So
installed because you have a record of them in there, right? And you can just go back and you kind of see. It makes spring cleaning when you're trying to go through and pull out things that you don't use very easy, because you just go in here and it's like, oh, I don't use MPV anymore, which is not true. But just for an example, I don't use Kdenlive anymore, which actually probably could get rid of that now that I got Resolve working on Linux again. But the difference between going to a package manager in your terminal or a software store, if you're a GUI kind of person, is completely different than having to go through and do a edit in a configuration file, then rebuild your system. Whether that, again, that's easier or more difficult, it really depends on how you look at it. For me personally, it's just different. It does include a couple extra steps. So if I were to install a package on Arch, I'd do pacman-S and then the name of the package, press enter my password, and it would install. I'd be done. I'd be using the package, within a minute or so, right? Depending on what I'm installing, if I have to build it from scratch or whatever, right? On NixOS, I have to open up my configuration file. I have to put the package name, where time, when you're.
Yep. Once everything is set up, you're not going to be installing or uninstalling packages. You just do it once, and I guess the initial investment is quite high because you have to tweak things, and man, that is a pain that I don't want to go through. And that's what has been holding me back so far with Nix. Like the investment is gonna be high, brother. But Rumen is gonna hopefully demo Nix in the next root access call this Friday.
Tidbits, if you will, that are out there. They're really different. Things like Flakes, things like Home Manager, those are added complexity on top of just a regular configuration file. And I do use Flakes, I do use Home Manager, and I may talk about those more here in a second. But when people think of NixOS, and when I thought of NixOS for a long time, what's the first thing you think of? You think of a configuration file, because that's how that's the entire structure of the system. It all surrounds this, in my case, a hierarchy of files, or one single file for a lot of people. And the entire system lives off from that document. But NixOS is more than that if you choose to embrace the complexity. So let me.
Years ago, updated. Okay, so this is the Yabai configuration. I know these options. So this is just the default Yabai config. What is this? This is on this repo, Haywood LH. But it's his flake, right? The fuck? Is there like an official Yabai flake or what? You build your flake. Okay. So what is this repo that
these files are your?
And he declared here GitHub trim Mau Mango WC. Like, is this like the official Mango? That's a window manager, right? Flake or what is that?
The direct Git repository for Mango WC. The entire package, right? The entire repository is given by this link right here, right? And you right.
But Mango WM, okay. Recipe with your ingredients. You can define what version, what commands. Okay, so I have my Yabai configuration already, right? So I could tell an AI, hey, motherfucker, just grab all this shit and make a flake out of it. And it would do it in theory, right? Right?
Here, basically, it just allows all of the files that are listed here to reference these files, right? And then you just go to one of these files, and in one of my apps or whatever,
Okay.
then install MangoWC. Basically what this is doing, if I'm explaining this reasonably, is taking that repository, cloning it in some form or fashion, getting all of the bits and pieces, and then building it for you. That's literally what it's doing in terms of what this Flake, says, right? It's taking the repository, it's making it available for the rest of your configuration file. The configuration file says, hey, let's install MangoWC, and during your first build, after putting that in there, it will install MangoWC. So the way that I've come to use this, and whether or not that's the correct way, or I'm explaining this the stupid way, I don't know. I can't, and it got...
Did you, Matt? Did you, or you just lied to us? Matt, what the fuck, brother? Oh, he did, okay? He did. I was gonna talk shit. So he did add them here referenced, okay? I think I wouldn't have added them, to be honest. So that's why I don't say shit, because I'm not gonna add them, brother. Like,
got me started. The problem, of course, is NixOS complexity changes. There are now things called flake parts, and there's a couple other different ways of putting these things together, because NixOS is a programming language. Or Nix is a programming language, I should say. And because that's true, there's more than one way to do everything. I was going to say something about skinning cats, but that's probably not the PC way of doing things, right? Everything you do on NixOS, and this leads me to my biggest problem with NixOS. And I think I talked about this on the 6 months part, but it has been proven to me over the course of this year. Because there's a different way of doing everything, no one can explain how to do anything, okay? If you go ask a long-time Nix user, they can explain something to you if you ask them a question. But just because they've explained it to you doesn't mean you can actually use that knowledge unless you've...
need a YouTuber that uses Nix-Darwin, brother, because I need someone that has done this, but not a big YouTuber like DevOps Toolbox. He's just gonna tell me, go and fuck yourself, little brother. Not Dreams of Code. He's huge as well. I need a small channel like mine as well, like 15,000 subs that does Nix on macOS. Can guide me through the process. YouTuber that uses Darwin. But just what I'm using instead. Did Omar leave Nix aside already? Tim Joyer would be amazing, but he's full Linux. I don't think he's ever gonna try macOS, man. Like, hell no. He's gonna be like, stream every Friday. Yeah. Now, the problem is that I want someone that has done it before AI was a thing, because AI is sure gonna take me there. It's gonna help me through the process, but it's gonna hallucinate all that shit, and it's going to do things wrong, even if they work like it does with Emacs or it does with everything else. So I want someone pre-AI that was a Nix-Darwin user, that can provide like a prot. I need a prot on the Nix side that does macOS. And that's hard to find, brother, because most of the users are on Linux, man. Like, it's difficult on the macOS side of things, man.
I have NixOS friends. Like, I have friends who use NixOS like religiously. Like some of these guys are almost zealots when it comes to NixOS, and they love this thing. I'm kind of joining them in some ways. I really do like NixOS, but I can go to my friends who are diehard Nix guys and ask them a question, and they'll, because they like talking about NixOS just as much as I do, they will tell me, hey, this is, how you do it. I'll go put that code or that idea to use, and my system won't build because their way of doing something is completely different than the rest of my configuration was put together. They just don't fit together. They're trying to figure out,
oh, that's what I don't want.
What way is up, what way is down, and it's not for everybody. And that's I will make a video after the 2 years is done. I will, but my opinion of this isn't going to change in another year. NixOS isn't for everybody. In fact, it's for nobody. NixOS is for nobody. And let me tell you what I mean by this. There's not a problem that you have that is solved by...
You like the easy route, yep. I already spent all of my energy doing stuff in the past, and I'm like, I just don't want it anymore. What have I been doing lately that is challenging? I don't remember. Just do it like Rumen and ask AI to do it. I use AI for the things that I don't care about too much. But this would be like my main system that we're talking about. This would be like my operating system, my macOS, This is what everything depends on. And if AI fucks it up here, everything else is going to be fucked up. So this is like the base. This has to be done good. And this has to be done with someone with experience, no AI. Or if they use AI, it's fine. I don't care. But they need to have experience with Nix-Darwin pre-AI. Because, yeah, I could do it with AI, but... or maybe it gets it right. Maybe... like the new models are excellent and it's just going to get it right and nothing's going to go wrong. Who knows?
By NixOS that you don't realize it can solve without trying it first. I know that was a little oddly phrased. Let me try again. A lot of times when you are switching to something, you're switching to it because it's going to solve a problem you know you have, right? You need to do things a certain way. There's a package that you need something. There's a reason why you use like Ubuntu Studio or AV Linux, whatever it is, right? You go there because you know it has a certain use case that will solve a problem that you have. You're trying to get your music set up to work, so you go use a distro that is specific for music and content creation, right? Same thing for if you need to use NVIDIA graphics, right? If it's, say, for example, you have NVIDIA graphics, a lot of times Pop! OS is where you want to go simply because they do a better job.
Yeah, it's a huge point there. Yep. Like, when was the last time that I installed macOS on this thing? When I bought it. When I bought it, how long ago did I buy this computer? I don't remember. Maybe like 2 years ago, maybe? And I have not reinstalled macOS on this thing, and I will not reinstall macOS unless something catastrophic happens, right? So do I really need NixOS for that?
Selling feature that the NixOS guys are going to tell you about. And then they're going to talk about the configuration file and doing it that way. None of that's actually a benefit that's going to draw people in. It's just going to actually scare them away because it's so different, right? But once you try it out, like the only reason to use NixOS if you haven't already is because you want to try it, or you're a developer. But we'll talk about that maybe in a second. But really, if you just have the curiosity to try it, and you'll get on here, like I did, and you learn some of things like Nix shells, you learn things like some of the Flake stuff that's kind of interesting to do. You learn things like being able to control system services within the configuration file, which I adore. It's gonna be so hard if I leave NixOS next year to go back managing system services the regular old way. It's gonna be very, very difficult.
You like the shells? Oh, I don't know what you're talking about because I don't know anything about Nix, Rumen. Just what you have told me, what you told me last Friday, which was useful, which was really useful.
Because this makes way more sense. It just makes way more sense to me in my brain now because I can do everything all in one place. It's so cool. But I didn't know that it was so cool until I got in here and got into it, right? You couldn't have shown me this stuff before, and I would be like, well, the old way's fine. It works fine. I'm sure there are people out there right now watching this video, if you've made it however far along I'm in, like 30 minutes in, and you're probably saying, well, what's wrong with the old way? Even if you're not an old beard who's really against change, maybe even you're still new, what's wrong with doing the old way? There's nothing wrong with doing the old way. This way, I've just found works better for me. But again, you can't have that.
You, brother, I feel you 100%. Like, whatever tool I'm using at the moment is the best, The window manager that I'm using right now, Yabai, is the best. And that's what I say in my videos. And all of you agree, is the best. But then I'm going to move to another one, and that one is going to be the best. So, that's the way.
I mean, I do. Let me actually show you guys this. I don't know if this is you guys are going to just see my laptop. There is a NixOS sticker on my laptop along with a whole bunch of profanity. I can't take this to the library, but the probably shouldn't have shown that to kids, man. Kids, I'm telling you. But anyways, I have a sticker, but I can't get on my YouTube channel and say you should use NixOS unless you're a developer. Okay, if you're a developer, I really want you to try NixOS and really get into it. Not just like install it, but I want you to try out Nix shells. I want you to try out all of the really cool tooling that NixOS allows you to do in a certain way to create environments for.
Man, Tony knows a lot of shit about Nix. The only problem is that he's on the Linux side of things, But maybe he could translate from Linux to macOS, He can explain things. I think that wouldn't be such a bad idea.
And stuff that I need, and then I can just build it right from that shell and test it, right? As if it was running in a container all on its own. And that's really, really cool. Now you can
like someone next to me hovering and it's like really explaining every single concept. And if I have a question, I ask him and he like will go into just enough depth where he won't bore me with like detail.
Just enough depth, and look at it. He's like, that is suspicious, brother. Like, he's like, aren't you gonna say something about this? Like,
else and like too much, and it just gives you like just enough to understand the concept.
Just the tip.
Yeah.
And he says, yeah. He says,